Hi everyone, Paul here, and today's video is all about keeping your crypto safe. Now I don't know about you, but making money in the markets is hard enough, so we don't want to be giving any of it away. So today's video I've got 5 super simple tips, so this is a absolute beginner's video, so 5 super simple tips on how you can keep your crypto safe, so let's jump in. My first tip for keeping your crypto safe is to know yourself. Now this might sound a little trite, but effectively most people, when they have a problem, in terms of losing their crypto, it's generally because of something they've done themselves rather than something that's been done to them. You just don't really hear about it as much because it's far more interesting to hear about, someone's, someone getting hacked or, getting scammed or what have you. And this generally happens when, we're our not best selves, when we're, angry or we're greedy or we just can't be bothered, and that generally is when these sorts of things happen. And so being very aware of that is often very helpful to stop these sorts of things from happening. In terms of when people get scammed, generally it's because that sort of reptile part of their brain that gets a bit greedy sees a free lunch and they go after it. And so that's the kind of thing, that's the thing we need to guard against. Now, one of the things that's important, and this sort of permeates through everything you do in crypto, is you need to maintain a healthy level of paranoia. People are always out trying to get something for nothing, and just like anything, whether it's just regular financial services, and crypto is probably even worse. You need to maintain a healthy level of skepticism, and just be on your guard. And I think really, you just have to use common sense. Most of these things, if you sort of step back, give yourself a few moments to look at it, whatever the scenario is, just that little bit of extra time, you're going to make a better decision once you sort of distance yourself from, the immediate situation. My second tip to keeping your crypto safe is to choose a reputable exchange. Now, I think this is probably one of the most important decisions. Now, obviously, you're not bound by any single decision when it comes to choosing an exchange. You can choose as many as you like. I have quite a few of them for different reasons. Because your exchange is probably, your most important partner on your crypto journey. They're the ones you put the most trust in because you're in general either sending coins to them, you're transferring from one exchange to another, or you might be sending currency there, and you may be then transacting and then holding your coins on that exchange for a period of time, whether that's a short time or a long time. And so that exchange is the custodian of your assets. Now that means that they're effectively keeping them on your behalf. And so, if you think about anyone who keeps an asset for you, whether it's a bank or another kind of financial institution or intermediary, they're one of your most trusted partners. And so selecting them is really important, and it's something you should put time and effort and a good amount of research into. Now, I'm not going to go into particular exchanges to choose from because it's going to be dictated by which jurisdiction you reside in. And depending on what that is, that may be restricted to you. But the things that I would really look for is an exchange that has been around for a significant amount of time, is well capitalized, hopefully very profitable, and if possible is licensed in that jurisdiction. Now this isn't that common at the moment just because of the way cryptocurrencies are regulated, but in some jurisdictions there are crypto brokers, or exchanges I should say, that are starting to be regulated. So if you can find one of those, that's an even bigger bonus because they will then be required to meet the financial regulation in terms of asset protection and things like that for retail investors. And so that's a really big bonus if you can find one of those brokers. So the other reason why I think choosing a reputable exchange is really important, and focusing on ones that have those characteristics that I just mentioned, is that those exchanges, if they're well capitalized, if they're profitable, they're going to have the finances and ultimately the incentive to really put that investment of time and resources and really well qualified people to make sure that security is a priority. Now, any of the people involved in any of these significant exchanges are going to know about and probably, have been involved in some way, shape or form in some of the, hacks that have happened. And there's really famous ones like, Mt. Gox and so on, where, really large amounts of investor monies were just completely disappeared. So, that's going to be very front of mind for these people, and this is a serious business. There's lots of money in it. It's at a very early stage. And so all of these people, all of these serious actors in these organisations understand what's at stake. And so, if you're then with a big, reputable, well-capitalised exchange, they're going to be making, I should say, the appropriate investment in security. And ultimately, that's a really big benefit for you, and that's something that's worth paying a little bit extra in terms of fees to have, as opposed to, that small, not really well-known, not well-capitalised broker, just to save a little bit of money on transaction fees. Now, my third tip to keeping your crypto safe goes hand in hand with number 2, and that's, securing your exchange account. Now, this will vary a little bit from exchange to exchange, but generally there's going to be a lot you can do to ensure that your physical account and the access to that account with your exchange is as secure as possible. And this is something as simple as, having a strong password, like no weak passwords, two-factor authentication, whitelisting. So whitelisting is where you quarantine, you specify specific addresses and accounts that you approve assets to be transferred out of your account to. And you can also, at some exchanges, have particular holding periods, whether it's 24 hours or 7 days, it depends on brokers, exchanges I should say, that then allows you time that if someone does manage to get into your account, there's time for you to intercept that before those coins are transferred away. It's also important to make sure that you authorize all your devices, you verify your email, your phone number. If you've got the ability to put an anti-phishing code into the emails that your exchange will send you, so that you can more easily identify any sort of phishing scams that are being pointed at your email account. That's also very helpful. One of the things I'd recommend is to not use SMS when you're trying to use authentication methods. Two-factor authentication is just a much better method of authenticating, or adding that extra layer of security to your account. It's as simple as putting, the Google Authenticator app on your phone. And so with exchanges, these were all these different functions. Most of the good exchanges will prompt you to do these things, and they'll, potentially rate your account and restrict your ability to do certain things if you haven't enabled all of these security settings on your account. But I really strongly encourage you to go onto your exchange account. There'll be a section in your profile or similar which will have security settings, and you really should put every single security setting on your account that you can, even if you don't really think you're going to use them very often. I think the whitelisting one in particular is really important, because if someone does get into your account, the first thing they're going to try and do is transfer assets out. And this is a really good way of, you in advance can quarantine which ones you can transfer out to, and you've got a two-factor authenticate to change that at any time. So I think that's a really important one. And that's, all built into your account. Again, this comes back to why picking a reputable exchange is important, because those exchanges will have made big investments and have this additional security built into their platform. And again, that's something that's worth paying a little bit extra for in fees. And the other thing I'd say, just in terms of just with exchanges, is, if you are transferring in between exchanges or to wallets, or, if you're transferring out to a DeFi platform to, earn, rewards on your coins, is before you do any transfer or any major transfer, you always have to do a test transfer first. So, select whatever the minimum amount is, make that transfer. You can watch it on the blockchain if you want, and make sure it lands at the destination. And once it's done that, then you can send the balance. The last thing you want to do is send a big chunk of, say, if you've got most of your investment in, say, Bitcoin, and send it to a wallet, and you've just made a mistake, you've transposed a couple of characters, and it's gone and you can't get it back. And so those test transactions are super important. I can't stress that enough. That's probably one of the most important practical tips that's in this whole video. So the fourth topic, and this is more of a discussion, I guess, rather than a tip in terms of keeping your crypto safe, and this is wrapped around this term you'll hear again and again and again, and if it's not your keys, they're not your coins. And so one of the major criticisms that's pointed at exchanges is that, as I mentioned before, they're the custodian of your assets. And so, effectively think of them as one big wallet. That's obviously not how they're set up. They'd be much more sophisticated than that. But, if you think about it like one big wallet, your coins and everyone else's is in there. And so you can imagine for a hacker, that's like this honeypot that they want to get to. Now, as I said, that's not exactly true, and picking a reputable exchange is important because they have far more sophisticated systems in place. Lots of them have cold storage and hot storage and all these sort of different things to keep your coins safe. But there'll be lots of people who have an opinion that you should never keep your coins on an exchange. Now, I think there's lots of layers to this, and I don't think this is a one rule fits all type of thing. For example, if you're transacting quite a lot, it just doesn't make sense to be continuously moving your coins from one wallet to another, or one broker to another, or what have you, because number one, that's just a lot of inconvenience. And there's also risk in that. Before, I talked in the last section about, sending test transactions. The more of these manual movements you make, it can be quite stressful, especially if there's significant amounts of money at stake. And also technical proficiency, like, setting up a cold wallet, soft wallets. These are all things that take some skill. And if you don't have those, or if they're very new to you, it might just not be worth investing that time into at the moment, especially if the amount of money you're talking about is not super significant. There's some people you'll talk to who've only ever had their coins on an exchange. They've never put them into either a digital wallet or a physical wallet, and have never had a problem. Now, that's not to say you won't, but it's a balance. And so, if you were looking at I guess a gradient, most people would say that on exchange is riskier. A software wallet, sort of a hot wallet, is probably in the middle, and obviously on a hardware wallet, in cold storage is seen as probably the safest. Now, obviously, you don't have to have just one of those. You can have combinations of that. You're not restricted in any way, shape, or form. But there is I think a worthy debate around the safety of these things, because if you have a hardware wallet, and you lose that, or you forget the PIN, or you lose the seed phrase, any of these sorts of things, then you've lost your coins. And then there's the whole issue of that physical device, about it being in a place where it can't catch on fire or flood or any of these, or physically damaged, because someone could physically steal it and then it's gone from you as well. So there's lots of other issues. In software wallets, obviously, if you've got a device that's hosting that particular application and then that device gets a virus, well, you've got a problem there as well. So you can see that there's no simple answer there, and it's really going to come down to how much of a investment you have in those coins, how transactional you are, how proficient you are in terms of managing that technology, and how comfortable you are with that, and how much of an investment of time are you willing to make with that. And then there's just a whole issue of concentration risk as well. So if you have all of your assets sitting in one place, like on, say, one exchange, that obviously increases your risk, because if that particular exchange has an issue, you've got all your eggs in one basket. Same thing as if you have it in one, physical device. Again, you've got concentration risk because if something happens to that device, you've got an issue vis-a-vis with a software wallet. And so, again, this all comes down to, complexity. The more complex you make it, the more likely you're going to make a mistake and the more likely that there's going to be an issue. And so, that's a really, I think, personal decision. I myself, I keep everything on exchange. Now, I think that for me is an easier option just because I'm transacting quite a lot, and I tend to move between exchanges depending on what I'm trying to do. And so the way I address this is I have multiple exchanges, and I have exchanges really for different purposes, and I often have to move in between them, and that's sort of how I address the concentration risk. And in the future, if I needed to take those assets off, I've got a hardware wallet that I can put them into at a future date. But in terms of my day-to-day, I just keep them on exchange. And so this is, I think, a pretty personal decision. And if you go onto YouTube, you'll see lots of people promoting hardware wallets. They've also got affiliate links. You can read into that how you like. And so some people are big proponents of software wallets. And so, look, I think that there's arguments for each, and it really is a personal decision. So that's really more of a discussion rather than a piece of advice or a tip. But I think for probably most beginners, especially if you're starting off with a small amount, on exchange, especially if you've really made that investment of time into researching the best exchange, that's going to be a pretty good option to start. And, in time, maybe you start investigating some of those other options. Maybe look at a software wallet first as an easy, progression. And then if you have more money, if you have a bigger investment and you can justify it, then look at one of those hardware wallets. Okay, my fifth and final tip on how to keep your crypto safe is that old adage that if it's too good to be true, then it probably is. Now, unfortunately, just because of the prominence of crypto and because it's kind of a little bit Wild West still, there's scammers everywhere, and their methods are getting better all the time. They're very sophisticated. If you watch YouTube often, you'll see there's been live stream ones where they're using prominent people in the crypto community as sort of a legitimizing evidence piece in their scam. And then they have these really clever sort of things in terms of advertising and sending you off to a website which has countdowns. It's like, send us one Bitcoin and we'll send you 10 back or 2 back or whatever. And they do all the clever things as they make you feel like you've got to make that decision now, and they appeal to that lizard part of your brain about the greed. If you send us one, you'll get 10, and you'll be able to 10x your investment with no risk. And of course, the reality is that that's a classic example of something being too good to be true. And if you send your coins to something like that, you're never going to see them again. Now, I think the thing with this sort of thing is we all sort of laugh at, who are the people who fall for the Nigerian prince, email scam and things like that. But ultimately, these scammers do these things because they catch people all the time. And, I posted a video not so long ago just warning people about the streaming scams because they're pretty convincing. And there was, in some cases, tens of thousands of people watching these streams. And, you can just imagine how many people were caught out. So, it's important to remember, there's just no free lunches. You've got to earn these coins the hard way, and no one's going to give you something for nothing. And, if you are in a situation where you're presented with something and you feel like it's an opportunity, and this goes down to investing in projects as well, is, it's really your responsibility to, take a step back, think about this situation objectively. Would this person really be giving me this opportunity? No one's that special. Do some digging on the internet. Google's your friend. You've got Reddit, you've got Trustpilot. There's all these places where you can go and check the veracity of the claims that you're being presented with, and then you can make an informed decision. But your guiding principle ultimately should be that if it's too good to be true, it most definitely is. So there you have it. They're my 5 tips for keeping a crypto safe. And as I promised, there's nothing super complicated in there. I think it's all pretty practical, common sense kind of advice. And, I think if you apply that, you're going to be on a really good path to, keeping those hard-earned coins in your own pocket and not in the pocket of, some scammer. So I hope you found that useful. If you found this video helpful, it'd be great if you could like it. That helps other people find it. And subscribe, because I'm always trying to produce content like this, which is helpful to especially new investors. So I'll see you in the next video.